There's a name circulating through NBA circles right now that's causing Lakers fans to have very strong reactions, and the connection between this player's current disaster in Dallas and our championship aspirations in Los Angeles is something that needs to be addressed head-on before the February 5th trade deadline. Welcome back to Lakers News Fan Report, your absolute premier destination for comprehensive Lakers coverage, breaking news, exclusive analysis, and everything you need to know about our beloved purple and gold. I'm bringing you critical information today about a situation that's developing in real time, involving a former Laker whose career trajectory has taken such a dramatic nosedive that it's forcing us to have some very important conversations about roster construction, player evaluation, and what it means to build a championship contender in today's NBA. Stay with me through this entire breakdown, because what I'm about to reveal will put to rest some speculation that's been floating around Lakers Twitter and give you the complete picture of where this franchise is heading. Let me start by taking you back to a moment that seemed significant at the time, but now feels like ancient history in terms of how quickly circumstances can change in professional basketball. The Los Angeles Lakers traded Dangelo Russell last season as part of the package that brought Dorian Finney-Smith to the roster, a move that was met with mixed reactions from the fan base but represented a clear strategic decision by the front office. Some fans were sad to see Russell go, remembering his contributions during that magical run to the conference finals in 2023. Others were relieved, tired of the inconsistency, the defensive lapses, the playoff disappearances that had become all too familiar. But regardless of where you stood on that trade at the time, I think we can all agree now that the Lakers made absolutely the right decision in moving on when they did. Dangelo Russell signed with the Dallas Mavericks in the offseason, and the expectations were relatively high, despite his struggles in his final Lakers stint. Dallas desperately needed a playmaker who could facilitate offense, create shots for others, and provide veteran leadership. On paper, Russell seemed like a reasonable gamble at $5.6 million this season. The Mavericks were betting that a change of scenery, reduced pressure, and a defined role would allow Russell to recapture some of the form that made him an all-star earlier in his career. That bet has failed spectacularly, and we're now watching in real time as the Dallas experiment completely implodes. The numbers tell a story that's even worse than what the eye test reveals, and trust me, the eye test has been brutal. Through the first 15 games of the season with Dallas, Russell is averaging just 11.9 points, 4.9 assists, 2.8 rebounds, and half a steal in 22 minutes per game. Those are career-low numbers in both scoring and minutes played. But the efficiency metrics are where things get truly catastrophic. Russell is shooting just 38% from the field and an abysmal 22.7% from three-point range. For a player whose entire offensive identity is predicated on being a floor-spacing shooter who can knock down open looks, shooting under 23% from deep, is essentially disqualifying him from being a rotation player on a competitive team. The advanced statistics paint an even grimmer picture. Russell currently has negative value over replacement player, meaning he's literally providing less value than what a minimum salary replacement level player would provide in his minutes. His win shares per 48 minutes are also negative, indicating that the Mavericks are actively worse when he's on the floor compared to when he's sitting on the bench. These aren't just bad numbers. These are historically poor metrics for a player with Russell's experience and pedigree. Dallas has responded by moving him to a bench role, hoping that reduced responsibility might help him find some rhythm, but even that adjustment hasn't yielded positive results. The Mavericks are currently headed toward lottery territory, a stunning fall from grace for a franchise that was in the finals just 2 seasons ago. The combination of injuries, roster misconstruction, and poor veteran acquisitions like Russell has created a perfect storm of dysfunction in Dallas. The organization is now over the first luxury tax apron, facing significant financial penalties while fielding a non-competitive roster. They desperately need to get younger, recoup some draft capital that was sacrificed in previous moves, and lower their luxury tax bill to create future flexibility. Trading D'Angelo Russell represents a starting point for that rebuild, but finding a trade partner willing to take on his contract and his current production level will be extraordinarily difficult. Here's where Lakers fans need to pay very close attention, because there's been some whispered speculation in certain corners of social media and fan forums about whether the Lakers might consider bringing Russell back for a third stint with the organization. After all, the thinking goes, he's making minimal money, he knows the system, he has history with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and maybe a return to familiar surroundings could help him rediscover his game. On the surface, I can understand why some fans might wonder about this possibility. Lakers fans have big hearts, and there's a natural inclination to want to help former players who are struggling. But I'm here to tell you definitively, unequivocally, and with complete certainty that D'Angelo Russell will not be returning to the Los Angeles Lakers. That ship has sailed, been dismantled, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. It's not happening, and Lakers fans should feel nothing but relief about that fact. Let me explain exactly why the Lakers have zero interest in reuniting with Russell and why this represents mature, intelligent decision-making by the front office. First and foremost, the Lakers lived through the Russell experience twice already. They drafted him with the second overall pick back in 2015, investing significant draft capital in a player they believed could be a franchise cornerstone. By 2017, just 2 years later, they shipped him out in the trade that brought back Kyle Kuzma and Brook Lopez. That first Russell era ended because the franchise recognized he wasn't the right fit for what they were trying to build. Then Russell returned in 2023, and yes, he had some good moments during that conference finals run. But the Lakers also saw up close his defensive limitations, his inconsistent shooting in high-pressure situations, and his tendency to disappear when the games mattered most. The front office made the decision to trade Russell in December of 2024 because they recognized that keeping him would represent wasting another year of LeBron's remaining prime and another year of Anthony Davis's championship window. That wasn't a decision made lightly or impulsively. That was a calculated, strategic move by basketball decision-makers who had all the information, who had watched him every single day in practice and games, who had analyzed every data point and performance metric available, and who concluded that the Lakers needed to go in a different direction. And critically, the Lakers haven't had a single regret about that trade since it was executed. Think about what the Lakers have accomplished since moving on from Russell. They've improved defensively with better cohesion and effort on that end of the floor. They've developed better offensive flow with more ball movement and less isolation-heavy possessions. They've created a more stable rotation where players understand their roles and can perform them consistently. The locker room chemistry has improved with everyone buying into the same defensive principles and team concepts. Every single measurable metric suggests the Lakers are better off without Russell than they were with him. And that gap has only widened as we've watched his performance crater in Dallas. Now, let's address the elephant in the room directly. Some fans might be thinking that Russell's low salary makes him a low-risk proposition, that maybe the Lakers could acquire him for essentially nothing and see if he bounces back. But that thinking fundamentally misunderstands how championship-level organizations operate. Roster spots matter enormously, especially for teams with title aspirations. Every single player on your 15-man roster needs to either be contributing now or developing for the future. There's no room for charity cases or nostalgic reunions with players who are actively hurting their current teams. Russell, at this stage of his career, performing at this level, would take minutes and opportunities away from younger players who actually have upside, or from veterans who are actually producing at NBA-level standards. Moreover, bringing Russell back would send an absolutely terrible message to the rest of the roster. It would signal that past relationships and comfort level matter more than current performance and accountability. It would undermine the coaching staff's authority to demand excellence and effort when they're simultaneously bringing back a player who was traded away and is now posting career-worst numbers on another team. It would create awkward dynamics in the locker room, where other players might wonder why Russell deserves another chance when they're being held to strict performance standards. Every single element of organizational psychology and team building argues against this reunion, regardless of the minimal financial cost. The Lakers' front office is being aggressive and active ahead of the February 5th trade deadline, exploring multiple avenues to improve the roster and maximize this championship window. They're looking at potential upgrades at multiple positions, evaluating which role players might become available, assessing which young prospects might be worth taking a flyer on, and determining what assets they're willing to part with to make meaningful improvements. D'Angelo Russell is not on that target list. He's not even being discussed in Lakers war rooms. The organization has moved on completely, and Lakers fans should celebrate that fact rather than question it. Let's put this in perspective by examining Russell's complete career arc, because understanding his history makes it crystal clear why the Lakers made the right call. Russell has now been traded 5 times in his NBA career, which is an extraordinarily high number for a player who's only 30 years old. The Lakers traded him twice, which should tell you everything you need to know about how multiple regimes within the same organization evaluated his long-term value. After leaving Los Angeles the first time, he went to Brooklyn, where he had one solid season that earned him an all-star selection. But then his performance declined, and the Nets were happy to move him to Minnesota. In Minnesota, he again showed flashes, but never consistently played at the level required for a championship contender. Then he returned to the Lakers, had that mixed run, where he helped get them to the conference finals, but also showed all his familiar limitations and was traded again. The pattern is undeniable. Russell is a talented offensive player who can get hot and win you regular season games with his shooting. But he's also a defensive liability, a streaky performer who disappears in pressure situations, and someone who has never proven he can be a reliable playoff contributor on a team with title aspirations. Those aren't character flaws or personal criticisms. Those are objective basketball realities based on a decade of NBA evidence. And at age 30, with his athletic decline accelerating and his shooting percentages cratering, there's no reason to believe he's suddenly going to transform into the player he's never been. Dallas is now desperately trying to figure out how to move Russell before the deadline, but they're discovering what the Lakers already knew when they traded him. His value is essentially zero on the open market right now. The Mavericks are reportedly trying to package him into larger deals, potentially as a salary filler in trades involving their remaining valuable assets. The rumored shift toward rebuilding around the Cooper Flag timeline, assuming they land a high draft pick, puts players like Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving on the theoretical trade block, though Davis obviously isn't going anywhere given his age and the Lakers' timeline. The Mavericks' best hope is finding a team desperate enough for one of their star players that they'll agree to absorb Russell's contract as part of the package, essentially treating him as a necessary salary component rather than a valued asset. For rebuilding teams that might consider taking Russell in a trade, the calculus is simple. He's on an expiring deal at minimal cost, so he doesn't represent long-term financial commitment. But he's also 30 years old with declining performance, so he doesn't represent developmental upside. The only scenario where Russell makes sense for a rebuilding team is if they're getting significant draft compensation to take him on, and even then, they'd likely just buy him out rather than actually playing him meaningful minutes. That's the reality of where his career currently stands, and it's a long way from the promising young lottery pick the Lakers drafted back in 2015. Lakers fans should feel validated in their assessment of Russell's limitations, but we should also have some basic human compassion for a player whose career is clearly spiraling. Nobody wants to see any player struggle the way Russell is struggling right now. It's not fun to watch someone's career deteriorate in real time, even if that player frustrated us with his inconsistent play during his Lakers tenure. We can simultaneously acknowledge that he gave us some good moments, particularly during that 2023 playoff run, while also recognizing that the Lakers made the absolutely correct decision in moving on when they did. The contrast between where the Lakers are now and where Dallas currently sits is stark and instructive. Los Angeles made a hard decision to trade away a veteran player who had fan support and some production, recognizing that his limitations outweighed his contributions for a championship-level team. They absorbed some criticism from fans who were attached to Russell, but they stayed committed to their evaluation and their long-term vision. Now the Lakers are positioned as legitimate title contenders with a functional roster, while Dallas is plummeting toward the lottery after making the opposite calculation about Russell's value. That's not coincidence. That's the result of sound basketball decision-making based on complete information and honest player evaluation. The Lakers' current roster construction reflects the lessons learned from the Russell era. They've prioritized two-way players who can contribute on both ends of the floor. They've emphasized defenders who can switch and guard multiple positions. They've added shooting without sacrificing defensive integrity. They've created depth at multiple positions so they're not overly reliant on any single player outside of their two stars. Every element of how this roster is built represents applying the knowledge gained from what didn't work with Russell to create something better and more sustainable. As we head toward the trade deadline, Lakers fans should be excited about the possibilities for improvement without any concern about regressing backward to players who didn't work out the first two times around. The front office has demonstrated they're willing to be aggressive, creative, and forward-thinking in their approach to roster construction. They're not going to sabotage that progress by making sentimental moves that contradict their basketball principles. Dangelo Russell is not coming back to the Los Angeles Lakers, and every Lakers fan should be grateful for that reality. His disastrous performance in Dallas has only confirmed what the front office already knew when they traded him, that he's not capable of being a positive contributor for a championship-caliber team. The Lakers have moved on, improved in his absence, and are now focused on adding pieces that actually fit their championship timeline. That's professional sports operating at the highest level, where organizations make data-driven decisions based on current performance rather than past relationships or sentimental attachments. Lakers fans should remember the good moments Russell provided, particularly during that 2023 playoff run. But we should also recognize that the team is better off without him, and that reunion speculation is completely unfounded. Make sure you subscribe to Lakers News Fan Report if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss breaking Lakers news as we approach the trade deadline. Share this video with your fellow Lakers fans because these are exactly the types of real talk conversations our community needs to have as we evaluate the franchise's direction. I'll be back with more comprehensive deadline coverage as we get closer to February 5th. Until then, let's go Lakers, and let's appreciate a front office that's willing to make the tough calls necessary to compete for a championships!